Hey everybody, welcome to Hammer Down, the podcast focused on supply chain careers, the cool things that are available, the cool opportunities that are out there, and the cool people doing those cool things. I am delighted today to be joined by Jordan Dickerson. Jordan is with Bad Birdie Golf, and we met each other on LinkedIn, so this is the first time we've chatted, which is pretty exciting. And I'm very excited to find out more about how we get the world's ugliest pants into the people that really need to wear them. Jordan, welcome to the show, man.
Mike, thanks so much for having me. Really thrilled that you asked me to join.
Such a treat to have you, Jordan. Tell me a little bit about Bad Birdie Golf. I made a joke about ugly pants, and that's just because I'm a terrible golfer. So, I hate the things I can't be, right? So tell me a little bit about the company.
Yeah, so Bad Birdie is about 6 years old now. It started initially as our founder Jason had a vision when he was living out in LA. Actually working at the film business. He wanted a golf polo that was more reflective of his personality, and he saw everything out there was kind of super stuffy and kind of sort of old school. And he just wanted something that really reflected his personality. So he actually went down to the garment district and just found some bright, vibrant olive print fabrics and found someone who could sew him a couple of polos just for himself. Ended up liking them, and he threw a couple hundred up online on a Shopify site to see if people would buy them. Sold out in the first batch, and so he sort of kept doing this as a side gig, I think, for the first year or so. Eventually sort of took off, and sort of became this brand built around really empowering people to be themselves around golf. Golf is typically kind of a seemingly gated off sport for some people, and it can be kind of intimidating. And really the mission is to encourage people to just come as they are to the game, really show their personality and sort of let their hair down. It's become over the last 6 years, that's really sort of the hallmark is still the very bright and all over print polos. But over the last year or two, we've sort of expanded more into sort of lifestyle apparel and, some just sort of broader appeal. Also have a women's line now. Still sort of, centered around the game of golf, but just more sort of everyday, every occasion lifestyle apparel.
So Jordan, how long have you been with the company?
So I'm actually a bit newer to the company. I joined almost a year ago now, right out a year, January 2023.
Okay, cool. Well, welcome. Congratulations. So a couple of questions along those lines. One, what was it about the company that you were attracted to? And then two, what are some of the challenges? So if I've got this right, we start out kind of in a side hustle, probably a bit of a just in time. Hey, look, I'm going to order 100. I'll try to sell 100 shirts. If they go, they go. To what I'm assuming is more of a real, honest production environment. Tell me about, one, what attracted you to the company. Two, if I'm right with that assumption, kind of what it is you're building.
There were a couple things that really drew me to the company. First and foremost, I had, over the course of the pandemic, I've really the last few years of my career primarily worked in sort of high growth startup environments or earlier stage startup environments, and had been doing that over the course of the pandemic. Was working for an e-commerce grocery concept that was based out of Chicago. It was primarily working remote here in Arizona, and honestly spent a couple of years just in my home office here by myself. And I was getting really stir crazy. And I missed the feeling of being in a room with people building something in the early stages, just that sort of like in-person camaraderie that you get. So when the e-commerce grocery company, when we shuttered that, I was like, I really want to sort of be in the room with people again. So that sort of centered my search to here in Phoenix. The other part of it was I missed that feeling of working for a brand that is really kind of in some element of like a cultural zeitgeist. So I was really fortunate and lucky enough to work for Uber back in 2016 and 2017, really when that was sort of the buzziest startup that there was really to work for. And Bad Birdie, obviously sort of a different scale and a much different space. But I had just heard a ton about this brand, and more importantly, like anybody who I saw wearing the product, everything I heard about it from the customer perspective, people absolutely love the brand. So the affinity for the brand from people who were customers already, I hadn't seen something that sticky in a while. And coming out of more sort of tech-centered companies, the ability to work for an apparel company in the D2C space primarily in the D2C space, really checked a couple of boxes that I just hadn't been able to check yet from a career perspective. So it really sort of brought some excitement in terms of new things that I could experience. And so yeah, it's been this awesome time of joining a company that's still in that like sort of scaling high growth phase, but in sort of a new context or a new perspective than what I was used to. And yeah, you're totally right. Some of the challenges, sort of joining the brand is it started off as really all D2C. Before I joined, the first couple of years, I think it was 100% e-commerce. Over the last couple of years, they really sort of experienced some growth and buy-in from the wholesale retail side. So we've got some amazing wholesale customers now, including Nordstrom, Dick's Sporting Goods, PGA Tour Superstore, and really in 2022 into 2023, that mix of being 100% D2C and then 80/20. When I joined, we were about 65% D2C, the rest wholesale. We've really over the last year come to more 50/50. So that comes with a lot of growing pains and new challenges from a wholesale compliance standpoint. Do you have the right partners who have the D2C muscle is sort of very specific, and when you're dealing with wholesale customers in that world, it really sort of requires some different skill sets. So sort of level setting on, do we have the right partners in place to execute on this growth in new channels, and still maintain our competencies on the D2C side. That's really been our bread and butter. It's just a challenging but also exciting space to be in because you're really having to do a lot of new things for the first time.
Jordan, what were some of the most interesting requests you got on the wholesale side? So you mentioned a couple of huge names like Dick's Sporting Goods and Nordstrom. Without naming names, what was sort of the more interesting or specific ask that made everybody on the team kind of say, wow, I hadn't thought about that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you touched on it in the last question. You mentioned, going from that just-in-time environment to you're really on a sort of larger production schedule and a different production scale. When you're working with wholesale customers, the D2C side, you sort of dictate your pace, you dictate your timelines, you can schedule your online drops whenever you want them and sort of work backwards from there in terms of design, production, then inbound timing and all flowing through the fulfillment center. When you're working with larger wholesale customers, they really, especially at scale, have the agency and the leverage to really sort of dictate upstream to you. So you're dealing with a whole other set of timings and constraints from hey, when do we actually get the main PO from the customer? When do we get the split from main parent PO to the DCs we're going to be shipping into, to what stores are they going to want those end units to go to? So you're dealing with more complexity around the sales orders that you're now producing against one-to-one, so that that creates more purchase orders with your manufacturers upstream, because sometimes you're producing one-to-one for a sales order that the wholesale customer is giving you. But you also may not have visibility at the time of production in terms of, hey, where do they want these units to go? And so by the time you actually get it to your DC, it's been packed one way from manufacturer, but now they're going to place, hey, this time we want to place POs by store. This time we want to place, sales orders by store. This time we want to place sales orders by style, by store. So you have hundreds of sales orders for one retailer across a number of stores and a number of DCs. So trying to, as a lean company, as a bootstrap company that's still growing, trying to manage your costs and your efficiencies upstream when you sort of don't have all the variables in hand when you start production, from a packing standpoint, from a quantity standpoint, can be really, really tough, and you deal with a lot of sort of gray area. And so trying to keep costs in line, being able to forecast effectively with sort of those bigger question marks at the sort of the customer endpoint, definitely add a lot of challenges. So I'd say those are some of the ones that we're dealing with now. And as you grow, you just really sort of have to make sure you execute on those requests as you get them, and then sort of as you get a bit more buy-in from those customers and you get a bit more history and a track record, it becomes more of more of a dance where you start to come back and say, hey, we need to maybe change a few things to increase our efficiencies, and also try to find the win-win for the customer to say, hey, this is actually going to save you some costs, but maybe get us these segmented sales orders 90 days out as opposed to 30 days out, things like that.
Now, you talked about the fact that this is a scaling company, and if I heard it right in the beginning, you kind of said, look, our heritage was we went down to the garment district in LA, we found somebody to make some stuff. Touting, or discussing some of the manufacturing partners you're working with, what percentage of goods are being created here in the U.S.? Have you started to either nearshore or move production into Asia or Eastern Europe, or where are you sourcing materials?
Yeah, absolutely. So the lion's share of our stuff is produced overseas. Really, probably 95% plus is overseas, but we're pretty diverse in that we have a good chunk still in China, but we also have actually a growing percentage of our production in Peru, which has been a really interesting origin to work with, and then a good percentage of production in South Korea. So as we've grown and we sort of tried to diversify our mix of manufacturers, we have from a material standpoint, we do sort of have a higher end, pretty sort of specific feel to our apparel. So that kind of limits the amount of like A/B testing that we're able to do, because we want to make sure that we're delivering the same product and experience to the customer as we grow. So we've dealt with, really the main challenges there is, bringing in freight from Peru is much different than bringing in freight from China. And, we've experienced, a lot more difficulties, whether it's from a customs perspective or just a consistent timing perspective out of Peru than at China. So as we grow, I think we do have to do some more of our like limited drops. That's one of the cool things about being omni-channel, but still having sort of an emphasis on sort of limited quantity, sort of fast from idea concept to dropping the product element to our brand. We do some smaller sort of custom runs here in the States for things where, we launch a new retail store. Maybe we only have 2 months visibility on, hey, our next retail store is going to be in Newport Beach. And so we spin up a really quick, custom t-shirt and hat for that Newport Beach store and produce that here in the States. I think that's one thing that we're going to be looking towards a lot in 2024 and 2025 is how do we take our current manufacturer base that we've kept kind of static as we've grown and really more played with the mix of production volume that we do across those existing origins. How do we maybe add some new origins to our mix as we grow, just to further diversify and de-risk our supply chain as things start to ebb and flow internationally over the next couple of years.
Sure. So Jordan, do I have this right? At the same time, you're tacking on somewhat demanding, or demanding is the wrong word, but particular partners who have, their own way of operating in order to, because they're Fortune 500 companies, they've established their precedent. You're now adding in production from 3 different countries with 3 different languages, bringing those in at the same time you're trying to figure out exactly how everything works with those new relationships. Do I have it right?
Absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right.
Gotcha. Well, yeah. What else have you done for me lately, man? Holy cow.
Definitely a lot of complexity, but a lot of fun. It keeps it interesting.
What do you think of what's the best part of your day to day, or what's the best part of working for Bad Birdie Golf right now?
I think honestly, it's the fact that because we're growing, because we're constantly encountering new challenges, you're going to have a diverse problem set to work on every day. I think that's one thing that I've always loved about working in startups or earlier stage companies and doing it in the apparel space. It adds such a new breadth of problems, just because apparel it's a really, really difficult space to be in to begin with. Even if you're an older company that has a very sort of set mix of customers and manufacturers, I had no clue before I joined. There's sort of this. There's kind of like maybe a bit of hubris in the VC-backed tech world of what we're working on is the most complex, difficult stuff in the world. I had no clue how difficult clothing and apparel really is. So there's this really interesting combination of right brain and left brain problem sets to work on. You have a set X factory date from a manufacturer when you think you're going to get a certain product out and that has to hit a very specific sort of ocean freight expected timeline from origin to destination. And then you're working in, here's our expected timing it's going to take to get through our fulfillment center. Well, then you have, the end customer say, hey, we actually need this stuff on hangers this time. And if you don't put it on hangers, you're going to get this sizable fine from us as a chargeback. And then you find out from the manufacturer at the same time, hey, that fabric, our farm didn't have the same yield of that type of cotton that we thought we were going to have. So we have to source it somewhere else. That's going to add 2 weeks, 3 weeks to our production time. And you have both those things happen at the opposite ends of the equation at the same time. And you went from being, hey, we're golden, to we just lost a month of lead time. How are we going to fix this? So just every single day, new problems to solve, but that also leads to new solutions that you can add to your toolkit. Just a really, really fun environment. I think it's also, just to add to that, we're working with really creative people and really analytical people. And it's just a really fun team to work alongside with every day.
All right. Who's your favorite golfer? Gotta know.
Favorite golfer? I have to go with the canned answer of Tiger Woods, I think. Only because I'll say, growing up as a biracial kid in the South, that was the first time that I saw somebody who looked like me playing golf. And it really sort of inspired me to get into the sport. So I think that's probably my number one answer. It's just Tiger, just because of what a game changer he was for the landscape of golf. And I think it really also echoes the mission of our brand, which is just to encourage people, no matter their background, to just get into the sport and just give it a shot. And that, it's a welcome place for anybody.
Awesome, man. Love it. So the final question I ask all of our guests here is one, so the podcast is really aimed at, again, touting the cool people doing cool things in supply chain as a way to encourage new and or recent grads to think about this industry, right? Like my working supposition is most people fell into it or were a legacy into it. Nobody woke up and said, I want to go work for a trucking company. What advice would you give to somebody who's in that situation? They're about to graduate college. Maybe they're a couple months away, thinking about their first job, trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up. And there's this $1 trillion industry out there that they're like, I don't know anything about it. What would you tell that person?
Yeah, honestly, I think my biggest word of advice, and this really sort of dovetails with just where I think the job market is for college graduates and sort of entry level, prospects right now, is just start. When I graduated from college in 2010. And it was sort of right on the heels of like the Great Recession. It was a super difficult time to get a job or start a career as a college graduate. And it was sort of logistics adjacent and not directly in the supply chain. But my first job was as a management trainee for Hertz Rental Car. I went to Vandy in Nashville, and starting college, I thought I'd get out and have this sort of ideal career path waiting for me. And by the time I graduated, it was like, take a number, like we'll get to you in a couple of years when we have something. I interviewed for a full year before I got my first job, and it was making $10 an hour washing cars, essentially. But I think if you just find the starting point anywhere in the area you're wanting to work in at some point. For me, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I grew up at the time. It was just sort of the job I could get. I was able to go from washing cars to renting cars to managing people that rent cars, to learning how we move cars around the region and the nation, to then learning how to buy cars in procurement, learning how to move cars at a larger scale, and then ultimately learning how more things than just cars move, and like just establishing those concentric circles of knowledge and expertise from whatever starting point you have to start at. So I really think don't despise the day of small beginnings, and just start. Some of the most incredible leaders I've met in logistics and supply chain started their careers, picking orders on the warehouse floor, or as you're trained to be a forklift operator, starting out as a entry level associate at a freight brokerage. Like wherever you have to start, like just get that experience, but keep your eyes open and be aware of the things around you, because more than likely you're going to get the exposure to other aspects of the supply chain, and it's going to be through through learning the parts of the business around you that you discover what your real passion is. So yeah, my biggest thing is just start. If it's working at a warehouse, I'm big on just going out there, getting real work experience wherever you can, and just don't look down on that. Don't despise it. It's tough to get the perfect job right out of the gates. Just start.
Jordan, if people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Absolutely. LinkedIn, just search for Jordan Dickerson. I think my actual URL is Jordan D. Dickerson. I'm on Twitter, Jordevant, JORDEVANT. Also, just shoot me an email, jordan@badbirdiegolf.com. And any one of those.
All right, Jordan, thanks so much for being a guest on Hammer Down. Hey, to all of our listeners, thank you so much. Appreciate it. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a rating, and whether it's the iTunes Store, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts, etc. Jordan, thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.